If you ever lay a hand on me again, I'll make sure you regret it for the rest of your miserable life." The words tumbled out of my mouth before I could stop them, my body trembling with a mixture of fear and rage as I stared into the cold, unforgiving eyes of my husband, Derek. His fist clenched at his side, knuckles white with fury, and for a moment I thought he might strike me again. But then a twisted smile spread across his lips, and he let out a low, menacing chuckle that sent shivers down my spine. "You think you can threaten me, Mallory?" he spat, taking a step closer. "You're nothing without me. You'd be lost, alone, and penniless if it weren't for my generosity." I swallowed hard, fighting back the tears that threatened to spill down my cheeks. This wasn't the first time Derek had lashed out at me, but it was the first time I dared to stand up to him. For too long, I'd been trapped in this gilded cage, blinded by the illusion of the perfect life we'd built together. From the outside, we were the picture of success. A powerful business mogul and his doting wife raising our beautiful daughter, Ava, in a sprawling mansion in the heart of the city. But behind closed doors, Derek's true nature revealed itself, a toxic blend of manipulation and control that had slowly isolated me from my friends and family. "I'm warning you, Derek," I said, my voice quivering despite my best efforts to sound strong. "If you ever touch me or Ava again, I'll leave, and I'll make sure you never find us." His eyes narrowed, and for a split second, I thought I saw a flicker of fear cross his features. But just as quickly, it was gone, replaced by that familiar smirk that made my skin crawl. "You're not going anywhere," he growled, closing the distance between us. "You're mine, Mallory, and if you ever try to leave, I'll make sure you regret it." With that, he turned on his heel and stormed out of the room, leaving me alone with the weight of his words hanging heavy in the air. I sank to the floor, my body racked with sobs as the reality of my situation crashed down around me. I had to get out, for Ava's sake and for my own. But how? Derek had made it clear that he wouldn't let us go without a fight, and I knew firsthand how far he was willing to go to get what he wanted. As the tears streamed down my face, I silently vowed to find a way. No matter what it took, I would break free from Derek's grip and build a life for Ava and myself, far away from his toxic influence. It was time to stop living in fear and take back control of my life. The next few days were a blur of tension and unease. Derek's outburst had shaken me to my core, but I knew I couldn't let fear paralyze me. I had to act, for Ava's sake, if not my own. As I went about my daily routine, I found myself constantly on edge, jumping at every sound, every movement in my peripheral vision. Derek, for his part, seemed to revel in my discomfort, shooting me smug glances whenever our paths crossed. "Mom, are you okay?" Ava asked one evening as we sat down for dinner, her brow furrowed with concern. "You've been acting really weird lately." I forced a smile, reaching across the table to give her hand a reassuring squeeze. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just a little stressed at work, that's all." Derek scoffed, shaking his head. "Your mother's always been a worrier, Ava. It's nothing new." His words cut deep, but I bit my tongue, unwilling to provoke another confrontation in front of our daughter. Instead, I turned my attention back to Ava, determined to keep our conversation light and casual. But as the days wore on, it became increasingly difficult to maintain the facade. Derek's verbal jabs grew more frequent, more pointed, and I found myself constantly on the defensive, struggling to keep my composure. It all came to a head one night after Ava had gone to bed. Derek and I were alone in the living room, and he wasted no time in launching into another tirade. "You think you're so high and mighty, don't you?" he sneered, his words slurred from the countless glasses of scotch he'd downed. "You think you're better than me, but you're nothing without my money and my name." "That's not true," I protested, my voice trembling. "I've worked just as hard as you have to build this life for our family." He let out a harsh laugh, shaking his head. "You're delusional, Mallory. You're nothing but a pretty face, a trophy wife to hang on my arm and make me look good." Before I could react, he was on his feet, towering over me with a look of pure rage twisting his features. "Maybe I need to remind you of your place," he growled, raising his hand as if to strike me. I flinched, bracing myself for the blow, but it never came. Instead, Derek stumbled backward, nearly losing his balance as he glared at me with a mixture of contempt and something else, something I couldn't quite place. You're pathetic, he spat, turning on his heel and storming out of the room, leaving me shaken and wondering how much longer I could endure this living hell. As I sat there in the silence, my mind raced, trying to make sense of the turmoil that had become my life. I knew I had to get out, but the thought of leaving filled me with a paralyzing fear. What if Derek found us? What if he made good on his threats? I jumped as my phone buzzed, pulling me from my dark thoughts. It was a text from Samantha, my best friend and the only person I trusted enough to confide in. Are you okay? I have a bad feeling about Derek. Please tell me you're safe. Tears stung my eyes as I read her words, a wave of relief washing over me. Samantha had always been my rock, my voice of reason in the darkest of times. Maybe, just maybe, she could help me find the strength to break free. With trembling fingers, I typed out a response. I need your help. Samantha's arrival was like a breath of fresh air. As soon as she stepped through the door, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders, the tension that had been coiling inside me for weeks finally beginning to unravel. Oh, honey? She murmured, pulling me into a tight embrace. I'm so sorry you've been going through this alone. I clung to her, fighting back tears as the floodgates threatened to open. I don't know what to do, Sam. He's become so volatile, so unpredictable. I'm scared for Ava and myself. She pulled back, her eyes blazing with a fierce determination. You're going to leave him. That's what you're going to do. The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Leave Derek? The thought had crossed my mind more times than I could count, but the fear of his retaliation had always held me back. I can't, I whispered, shaking my head. You know how vindictive he can be. If I try to leave, he'll make our lives a living hell. Samantha's grip on my shoulders tightened, her gaze unwavering. Mallory, listen to me. You are stronger than this. You have to be strong, for Ava's sake, if not your own. Derek is a monster, and you can't let him control you any longer. Her words struck a chord deep within me, igniting a spark of defiance that I thought had long since been extinguished. She was right. I couldn't let Derek continue to hold this power over me, over our family. Okay, I said, my voice trembling but resolute. Okay, I'll do it. I'll leave him. Samantha's face broke into a relieved smile, and she pulled me into another fierce hug. Thank God. We'll figure this out, Mal. I promise. You and Ava are going to be safe. Over the next few days, we hatched our plan. Samantha helped me open a secret bank account, squirreling away as much money as I could without arousing Derek's suspicion. We researched safe houses, potential places we could go to start over, far away from his reach. All the while, I walked on eggshells around Derek, careful not to give him any inkling of my intentions. But the strain was starting to show, and he grew increasingly suspicious of my behavior. What's going on with you lately? He demanded one night, cornering me in the kitchen. You've been acting strange, distant. I forced a smile, willing my hands not to tremble. It's nothing, Derek. I've just been stressed with work, that's all. His eyes narrowed and he took a step closer, backing me against the counter. Don't lie to me, Mallory. I know when you're hiding something. My heart pounded in my chest as he leaned in, his breath hot on my face. If I find out you're up to something, you'll regret it. Do you understand? I nodded mutely, too terrified to speak. Derek held my gaze for a few more agonizing seconds before turning and stalking out of the room, leaving me shaken to my core. As soon as he was gone, I sank to the floor, burying my face in my hands as the sobs racked my body. How much longer could I keep this up? How much longer before Derek saw through my lies and unleashed his fury upon us? I knew then that I had to act fast. Our lives depended on it. It all came crashing down one fateful night. I should have been more careful, more vigilant, but in my desperation to gather enough funds for our escape, I grew careless. I had just returned from a clandestine meeting with Samantha, slipping the latest cash withdrawal into the hidden compartment in my closet, when I heard the unmistakable sound of Derek's footsteps approaching. My heart dropped into my stomach as he flung open the bedroom door, his face contorted with rage. In his hand, he clutched a crumpled envelope, one of the many I had used to squirrel away our escape money. "What is this?" he snarled, brandishing the envelope like a weapon. "What the hell have you been up to, Mallory?" I froze, my mind racing as I scrambled for an excuse, any lie that might defuse the situation. But Derek was having none of it. In a flash, he crossed the room and yanked open the closet door, his eyes widening as he discovered the hidden stash of cash. "You lying bitch," he growled, whirling on me with a look of pure fury. "You were planning to leave me, weren't you?" I tried to speak, to explain, but the words caught in my throat as Derek advanced on me, his fists clenched at his sides. "After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me?" he roared, spittle flying from his lips. "You ungrateful whore." Before I could react, his hand lashed out, striking me across the face with such force that I stumbled backwards, stars dancing before my eyes. "Derek, please," I begged, tasting blood on my split lip. "I was only trying to protect Ava and myself. You've become so volatile, so abusive. I couldn't take it anymore." His eyes narrowed, and for a moment I thought I saw a flicker of remorse cross his features. But it was gone in an instant, replaced by a cold, calculating fury that chilled me to the bone. "You're not going anywhere," he hissed, grabbing a fistful of my hair and wrenching my head back. "You belong to me, Mallory, and if you ever try to leave again, I swear to God, I'll take everything from you, including Ava." The mention of our daughter's name sent a wave of panic crashing over me. I couldn't let him hurt her, not my sweet, innocent Ava. "Please, Derek," I sobbed, clawing at his iron grip. "Don't bring her into this. She's just a child." He let out a cruel laugh, his grip tightening until I thought my scalp might tear. "She's my child too, Mallory. And if you think you can take her away from me, you're sorely mistaken." With a final, vicious yank, he released me, sending me crumpling to the floor in a heap. As I lay there, cradling my throbbing head, I knew in that moment that our lives were in grave danger. We had to get out, and fast, before Derek's rage spiraled out of control. Because this time, I feared there would be no coming back. The next few hours were a blur of frantic activity. As soon as Derek stormed out of the bedroom, I sprang into action, my mind laser-focused on one goal: getting Ava and myself out of that house before it was too late. I scrambled to gather our essentials: a few changes of clothes, our passports, and the meager stash of cash I had managed to squirrel away before Derek discovered my plan. It wasn't much, but it would have to be enough to get us started on our new life, wherever that may be. My hands trembled as I packed, my heart pounding in my chest with each passing minute. I knew Derek wouldn't be gone long, and when he returned, his fury would be tenfold. As if on cue, I heard the unmistakable sound of his car pulling into the driveway, the tires crunching on the gravel like a death knell. I had to move fast. Abandoning the half-packed bag, I raced down the hall to Ava's room, bursting through the door to find her sitting cross-legged on her bed, earbuds in and oblivious to the chaos unfolding around her. "Ava," I hissed, startling her from her reverie. "We have to go now." Her eyes widened, confusion and fear flickering across her delicate features. "Mom, what's going on? What's happening?" I grabbed her by the shoulders, my grip perhaps a little too tight as I fought to keep my panic at bay. "There's no time to explain. We have to leave before your father gets back. Our lives depend on it." She must have seen the desperation in my eyes, because she didn't argue or question me further. With a shaky nod, she rose from the bed and followed me back to the bedroom, where I hurriedly stuffed the last of our belongings into the bag. The sound of the front door slamming sent a jolt of terror through me, and I froze, my heart in my throat. "Mallory." Derek's voice boomed from downstairs, laced with a menacing fury that made my blood run cold. "Where the hell are you, you lying bitch?" Ava whimpered, her eyes wide with fear, and I knew we had to move, now or never. Slinging the bag over my shoulder, I grabbed her hand and pulled her towards the bedroom window, my mind racing as I formulated our escape route. "We're going out this way," I whispered, already working to pry open the stubborn pain. "There's a trellis on the side of the house. We can climb down and make a run for the car." Ava nodded, her face pale but resolute. In that moment, I saw a strength in her that I hadn't realized she possessed, a steely determination that filled me with equal parts pride and sorrow. No child should ever have to experience the horrors we had endured. With a final heave, the window gave way, and I ushered Ava through, following close behind, just as the sound of Derek's thunderous footsteps reached the top of the stairs. We moved quickly, silently, our hearts pounding in tandem as we shimmied down the trellis and hit the ground running. The car was just ahead, our salvation glinting in the moonlight like a beacon of hope. But as we neared it, A figure emerged from the shadows, blocking our path. Derek? Going somewhere? He sneered, his eyes glinting with a feral madness that sent chills down my spine. In that moment, time seemed to slow to a crawl. I could see the rage etched into every line of Derek's face, the hatred burning in his eyes as he stared us down like cornered prey. And in that moment, I knew. There was no going back. The days and weeks that followed our escape were a blur of constant motion, a never-ending cycle of fleeing and hiding. We couldn't risk staying in one place for too long, not with Derek's resources and his unquenchable thirst for revenge. Samantha had been our lifeline, our guardian angel in those early days. She helped us secure false identities, safe houses, and transportation as we hopscotched across the country, always one step ahead of Derek's hired goons. But the psychological toll of living in perpetual fear was immense. Ava, my once vibrant and carefree daughter, grew sullen and withdrawn, her eyes haunted by the horrors she had witnessed. And I, too, found myself jumping at every shadow, every unexpected sound, my nerves frayed to the breaking point. Still, we persevered, driven by the knowledge that the alternative, falling back into Derek's clutches, was unthinkable. It was during one of our brief respites, holed up in a dingy motel on the outskirts of some nameless town, that the first crack in our defenses appeared. "Mom, how much longer are we going to have to keep running?" Ava asked, her voice small and defeated as she stared out the grimy window. I swallowed hard, my heart aching at the weariness etched into her young features. "As long as it takes, sweetheart, until we're sure your father can't find us." She turned to face me, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. "But what if he never stops looking? What if we have to spend the rest of our lives like this, always running, always afraid?" The questions hung heavy in the air, their weight crushing me under the weight of their implications. Because deep down, I knew she was right. Derek was a man possessed, and he would stop at nothing to track us down, to exact his twisted brand of revenge. "I don't know, Ava," I admitted, my voice thick with emotion, "but I promise you, we'll find a way to make it through this. Together." She nodded, but the spark of hope in her eyes had dimmed, replaced by a weary resignation that broke my heart. In that moment, I vowed to find a way to end this nightmare, once and for all. We couldn't go on living like this, constantly looking over our shoulders, our lives forever tainted by the specter of Derek's rage. It was time to take the fight to him. Over the next few weeks, I began to hatch a plan, reaching out to old contacts, calling in favors, and assembling a team of people I could trust to help bring Derek down. It was a risky gambit, but one I was willing to take if it meant finally securing our freedom. And then, just when I thought we had hit another dead end, a break in the case arrived in the form of an anonymous tip. Derek's location, his movements, his routine. It was the opportunity we had been waiting for, the chance to strike back and end this twisted game of cat and mouse once and for all. As I relayed the information to my team, a sense of grim determination settled over me. This was it, the moment we had been preparing for. The showdown was inevitable, and only one of us would emerge victorious. I only hoped that when the dust settled, Ava and I would be the ones left standing. The safe house was a nondescript warehouse on the outskirts of town, its weathered exterior belying the high-tech command center that lay within. As I stepped through the reinforced steel door, my heart was pounding in my chest, a heady mix of adrenaline and trepidation coursing through my veins. "You're sure about this, Mal?" Samantha's voice broke the tense silence, her eyes searching mine for any hint of doubt or hesitation. "There's no going back after tonight." I took a deep breath, steeling my resolve as I gave her a curt nod. "I'm sure Derek has to be stopped once and for all, for Ava's sake, if not my own." She pursed her lips, clearly not thrilled with the plan, but respecting my decision nonetheless. "All right then, let's get this show on the road." Around us, the team of ex-military operatives and private investigators I had assembled sprang into action, checking weapons and running final system diagnostics. The air was thick with tension, the weight of what was to come hanging over us like a shroud. "We have eyes on the target," came a gruff voice from the comm station, shattering the silence. "He's just left his office and is en route to the rendezvous point." My breath caught in my throat as a grainy image of Derek flickered onto the main monitor. His face twisted into a scowl as he stalked towards his waiting car. Seeing him again, even through the distorted lens of a surveillance camera, sent a chill down my spine and reignited the smoldering embers of fear and rage that had burned within me for so long. "Remember, we need him alive," I reminded the team, my voice steadier than I felt. "At least for now, he has to face justice for what he's done." A chorus of grunts and nods met my words. The men and women around me hardened professionals who understood the gravity of the situation. Still, I couldn't shake the nagging sense of dread that had taken root in the pit of my stomach. What if something went wrong? What if Derek managed to slip through our grasp once again, disappearing into the ether and leaving us to pick up the pieces of our shattered lives? I pushed the doubts aside, focusing instead on the task at hand. This was our one shot, our chance to end this nightmare once and for all. Failure was not an option. The minutes ticked by like hours as we waited with bated breath, tracking Derek's movements on the monitors until finally the call came in. He's arrived at the rendezvous point, moving into position. My heart leapt into my throat as the team sprang into action, donning tactical gear and checking weapons one last time before filing out of the safe house and into the waiting armored vehicles. "Stay safe," Samantha murmured, pulling me into a fierce hug. "And give that bastard hell for me." I nodded, unable to find the words as a lump formed in my throat. This was it, the moment I had been both dreading and anticipating for what felt like an eternity. As the convoy roared to life and peeled out onto the deserted street, I found myself gripping the edge of the console, my knuckles white with tension. Every fiber of my being was focused on the mission, on the confrontation that was about to unfold. Derek's reign of terror was about to come to an end. One way or another, tonight would be the end of the road, and I would be the one to put the final nail in his coffin. The days and weeks following Derek's capture were a whirlwind of legal proceedings, media scrutiny, and the long, arduous process of picking up the pieces of our shattered lives. But through it all, a weight had been lifted, a burden that had pressed down on Ava and me for far too long. As the truth about Derek's abuse and his relentless pursuit of us came to light, the world seemed to hold its collective breath, transfixed by the sordid tale of a once powerful man brought low by his own monstrous actions. And while the court of public opinion was swift and merciless in its condemnation, it was the judicial system's reckoning that truly mattered. The trial was a grueling ordeal, with Derek's high-priced legal team doing everything in their power to cast doubt on our testimony and paint him as the victim. But in the end, the evidence was too overwhelming, the pattern of abuse too well documented to be denied. When the guilty verdict was read, a hush fell over the courtroom, broken only by the soft sound of Derek's sobs as he was led away in chains. In that moment, I felt a sense of vindication, of justice finally being served after years of living in fear and torment. But more than that, I felt a profound sense of relief, as if a weight had been lifted from my shoulders, allowing me to breathe freely for the first time in what felt like an eternity. In the days and weeks that followed, Ava and I began the slow process of rebuilding our lives, piece by shattered piece. It wasn't easy. The scars of our ordeal ran deep, both physical and emotional, but we were determined to forge ahead, to reclaim the happiness and sense of security that had been stolen from us for far too long. Samantha was a constant source of strength and support, her unwavering friendship a lifeline that helped us navigate the choppy waters of our newfound freedom. Together, we found a cozy little apartment in a quiet neighborhood, a far cry from the opulent prison we had once called home. But to me, it was a palace, a sanctuary where we could finally let our guard down and begin to heal. As the months passed, I watched with a mixture of pride and wonder as Ava blossomed before my eyes, the shadows that had haunted her gaze gradually giving way to a newfound sense of joy and optimism. She threw herself into her studies, determined to make the most of the second chance we had been given, and I couldn't have been prouder of the strong, resilient young woman she was becoming. For my part, I found solace in the simple pleasures of life. Long walks in the park, lazy Sunday mornings spent curled up with a good book, and evenings spent laughing and reminiscing with Samantha over a bottle of wine. It was a far cry from the high-powered corporate world I had once inhabited, but in many ways it was infinitely more fulfilling. And through it all, the specter of Derek's legacy faded, his once formidable presence reduced to a mere footnote in the story of our lives. We had survived his reign of terror, emerging from the ashes stronger and more resilient than ever before. As I watched the sunset paint the sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink, I couldn't help but feel a sense of peace wash over me. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in what felt like an eternity, I was excited to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Because now, we were free to chart our own course, to write our own story, and to embrace the future with open arms. And that, I realized, was the